This is not an MKP training. This is simply the Elder Society Zoom room that they allow us to use, and the email list that they have available that we send the sir at University of Hawaii, and he has put together a great presentation specifically designed for us. So thank you for your energy putting this together, Mark. And I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Bob. Before I start in the slides, I just wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity. It's especially gratifying for me to speak to my MKP brothers on these important issues. So let's get started with the slides here. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Mother Ocean, Bounty, Threats, and Solutions. This will be a three-part discussion. I'll be talking about the gifts that Mother Ocean gives us, then we'll have a breakout, the threats to Mother Ocean, another breakout, and then most importantly, the solutions about which we can all participate. So I'm Mark Hixon. I'm a professor of marine biology at University of Hawaii. I've been very grateful to be part of the Mankind Project since the 1990s, and I've been extremely fortunate to have studied life under the sea for over 50 years now. We're not going to probably have time for question and answers, so if you have any questions about the content of my talk, my email's down there in the lower right. It's my last name followed by my first initial, Hixon M at hawaii.edu. So let's first talk about the bounty of the ocean, the wonderful, amazing goods and services provided by the world's oceans. So if you were an alien traveling around the universe looking for cool planets to explore, you would be completely stoked to find the Earth. It's one of the few planets that's basically covered by water, with everything going for it in terms of producing and harboring life. In fact, the oceans are the source of life on this planet. And as Arthur C. Clarke famously once said, how inappropriate it is to call this planet Earth when it is quite clearly ocean. Over 70% of the planet being covered by our seas. And the gifts that Mother Ocean gives to us are many. This is just one quick summary of some of the things. I'll look at some of these in more detail. The ocean produces about half the oxygen that we breathe and overrides basically our atmosphere and everything that goes on in our atmosphere. The global ocean is the regulator of our climate, as we'll talk about in greater detail with all these topics. Most of our transportation occurs on the ocean because ships can carry a large amount. Our economy is largely based on the ocean in many ways. And of course, there's recreation, food, and medicines that come from the ocean. So with that overview, let's look at a few of the details. Probably the earliest association humans had with the ocean was to get fish from it, fisheries. This is an old Byzantine fresco showing night fishing with a fire at the stern of the vessel, attracting fish that can then be caught by net. Nowadays, global fisheries is a huge business. We get some 90 million metric tons out of the ocean every year. But ironically, most of our fisheries go to the rich nations of the world, with the nations' areas being proportional to their fisheries imports. And what you can see is that 90% of the world fish catch goes to Japan, the European Union, and the United States. So we are the consumers of seafood, but that also makes us have the power to influence how fisheries are conducted. The second most important early use of the oceans by humans was transportation. There's now evidence that the peopling of the Americas was down the west coast of North America and South America, and then people spread inland from the coasts. This is a copy of the Polynesian voyaging canoe Hokulea, which demonstrated the prowess of the Polynesians spreading throughout the entire Pacific region, thousands and thousands of open miles of seawater between the islands. Nowadays, most of our commerce is conducted at sea. This is all the shipping lanes and flight lanes of the world right now. And with that transportation comes a variety of issues, as we'll see. We get a lot of our energy from the oceans. In the United States, that's oil and gas exploration off Southern California and especially the Gulf of Mexico, also associated with some problems. But importantly, we're now seeing sources of renewable energy from Mother Ocean. Wave energy, such as illustrated here, all you need to have is something move mechanically when waves pass beneath them to run a turbine and generate electricity. There's also tidal energy, where the flow of the tides in and out spins turbines. Wind energy, certainly forthcoming offshore wind farms.
We are going to record this.
And of course, recreation and tourism. So many people are attracted to the ocean for a variety of activities and relaxation. And it's a huge, huge world economy, especially for poor nations, some of who have the only resource they have is their ocean. And of course, part of that is the spiritual connection with the ocean. Personally, the ocean just has soothed my soul since I was a young child. This is a shot I took of Santa Cruz Island off Santa Barbara at dusk. This is where my ashes will be spread when the day comes. So besides all these obvious things, there's gifts that the ocean gives us that most people don't think about, one of which is pollution absorption. That is, estuaries, these sort of netherworlds between land and sea, where at the mouth of rivers and creeks, are extremely efficient at filtering and sequestering pollutants from the waterways that flow through them. So they become sort of natural dumps of stuff we're spewing into the world. The oceans are also extremely important, at least sea life is extremely important for protecting our coasts from severe erosion. This is the island of Moorea in French Polynesia. In the background, peeking over the horizon or at the horizon, you can see Tahiti. And that sort of light blue band around Moorea is its coral reef, which absorbs all the wave energy coming to that island so it doesn't hit the shore. You have similar things with our salt marshes on the east coast of the U.S., mangrove forests around the Gulf Coast and elsewhere in the world. This fringe of life around the land is especially important as sea levels rise, and so many people live along our coasts. And finally, what most people never think about is all the amazing new medicines we are getting from very humble coral reef organisms. So, for example, a snail that provides a pain reliever, a sponge that provides an anti-cancer agent, and a sea squirt. Very humble organisms. But what's happening is we're losing species much more rapidly than we can screen them for new medicines. And, think about someone you know with a rare form of cancer or any form of cancer, and maybe the organism that would provide the cure has already been lost because of human activities. But the pharmaceutical companies are now rapidly screening these organisms for all the bizarre, amazing chemicals they produce and their medicinal properties. So, first breakout question, what has been your greatest gift from Mother Ocean?
Oh. Okay, welcome back. So let's take a few minutes and share what came up for you during your conversations. So anybody can start.
Well, I heard fly fishing in the surf, fly fishing in the ocean, which I had never heard of. And it sounds fantastic.
Reminded me of fair with the water. Some people call me a water dog. I was a state champion swimmer, and there's something magical about it. And I mentioned earlier, lived in a little palapa, didn't live there full time, but I had a palapa on the water in Cabo Pulmo, in southern Mexico, and for 50 years, and fished the beach down there with a fly rod, and it was just pure heaven.
And I bragged about body surfing.
Yep.
Yeah, I shared with Arthur and John when I was a kid growing up in Australia. My parents had a beach shack. People would say beach home, but it was really a shack. It was like, it was a shack near the water on Phillip Island. And Phillip Island is a sanctuary for koalas and the wildlife, and particularly the fairy penguins. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's the only place you get penguins naturally. So they would come up after when the sun would go down, we'd sit on, even in, not freezing, but it was cold, watching these little fairy penguins about maybe a foot high waddle up the beach, and they'd be attacked by the seagulls trying to get them to regurgitate the meals and all that stuff. But as a kid, it was fascinating. And but I've a lot of respect for the water. I loved getting into the ocean, but it can be pretty dangerous. I learned very quickly to respect the ocean, which I did, but I loved it. Loved getting into the water. So that was my little sharing about my early life.
So what I was thinking of all the joy of childhood, going down to the beach and everybody yelling and thousands of people being there and rolling around in the sand and learning to body surf and whatever all is going on. And I realized that for people less fortunate than me, that was the only way they could get out of their homes, for many, I trust, and release some of the stress and find out, at least touch nature a little bit, and to experience joy and the freedom for children of just yelling their heads off. And but as I grew, I became a world traveler, and had at different times have done some snorkeling in the West Indies in a tiny island called Mustique, and the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, in Papua New Guinea, in South Africa, the waves pounding on the beaches, and the large sea mammals who are living really in the ocean, but also come up to the shore. Swimming in kelp beds where I got all tangled up and couldn't figure out a way to get out. And then I realized that the intricacy of life, most of it exists not on land, but in the ocean, the vast majority. And the intricacies, because I see the big fish and but the microorganisms sustain all of life through the various food chains and so forth, all of life. And then witnessing some of the bleaching corals in these places that I've mentioned, where is life going to come from if it doesn't come from the place that it comes from? That's it for me for the moment.
Well, I was sharing with Mark what's interesting to me is intellectually, I when I think of the gifts of the ocean, I know that the ocean provides fish, which I love, that is really responsible for a lot of the oxygen that we breathe, that sustains life. And intellectually, I know all these bounty from the ocean and all that. But for me, the first thing that come to my mind about the gifts of the ocean was very visceral. It was growing up in Southern California and going to the beach, loving the sound of the waves, splashing around in the water, getting tumbled about, being young and not realizing how potentially dangerous that was. But, is just the actual experience of being in the ocean, of walking along the shore, those kinds of things. It's just the ocean just provides. It's just, and I never end just delighting the sound of the ocean and the motion of the surf and so forth. It's just, like I say, the visceral experience for me is wonderful. So thanks for hearing me. Near the ocean.
Now?
Yes.
How close is near?
Gosh, I'd say within an hour's drive.
5 miles.
All right. Yeah. Walking distance. Cool. Okay. Great. Thanks.
I'm in Sin City. It's about 4 hours away.
Yeah. Brian Harold and I are in Albuquerque. It's like 4 hours by
I live 2 to 3 miles from the Detroit River.
All right. Thank you.
I especially appreciate those of you who don't live by the beach being here. As we'll see, the ocean is affected by us and still blesses us regardless of where we live.
For me, the ocean is something as a warrior I go to in my mind, because when I go to my center, I think and meditate on the waves of the ocean splashing on the shore, and it centers me and it brings me peace because it's a constant and it's always there, and the rhythm helps me sleep when I'm going to bed at night. And my animal name, spirit animal name, is Spirited Loving Dolphin. So I have an affinity for the ocean, even though I'm landlocked and 1,000 miles away. It's something that I dream about, and I think that the ocean is rich with so many gifts, as you brought up out there, Mark. And not having it handy makes me take it and appreciate it, as opposed to not. And so I wish I could live near the ocean, but I don't. And so that's my reality. But I chose the spirit name of Spirited Loving Dolphin because dolphins are intelligent in themselves. They're intelligent, they're playful. And what they do is they exceed their own limits because they come up and catch air. And I wonder, we humans, we can only use airplanes to make that happen, but dolphins can do it naturally. So I see that as a gift. So I'm in with that. I'm complete.
Even my first animal name was Loving Dolphin. And then I had a vivid dream that turned me into orca.
You got bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah, there you go.
I found my power.
You found your power, a bigger cetacean, right?
A big dolphin.
Yeah.
And I spent my first 55 years more than 1,000 miles from the ocean, but I was really living most of that on the Mississippi River, which is very connected to the ocean. And when the first time I went out to California, I took video of waves coming in that I took back with me, and it brought me out to the ocean. And I became sea turtle. Is my name, and I really loved spending time in Hawaii and Maui snorkeling. So I'm really drawn to it. And tomorrow I will do a beach walk, I group on the ocean. I'm in.
So Tom, a little bright story about the ocean. When I lived in Hawaii in the 70s and early 80s, I never ever saw a sea turtle doing lots and lots of diving around the islands. Now, having come back, and living here now, I see them on every dive. The Honu are back, and it just, every time I see a sea turtle, it just brings joy to my heart. They're such benign, gentle creatures, and they've come back from everyone eating them and their eggs. So it's a good reason for hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can, let me add something to that. I can verify, I'm in the Bahamas every spring, and they have outlawed all turtle fishing and hunting down there, eggs and turtles as well. And we are seeing a huge explosion. We see at least 30 or 40 every day on the flats down there. And also hearkening back to my days in Cabo Pulmo, when the Mexicans would come follow the huge turtles up the beach, find their eggs and take them all. They are now carefully staked out, and nobody dares get involved touching or eating eggs or in any way harming turtles. So there are definitely some very, very encouraging signs out there for sea life.
The turtles?
Oh yeah, in the tropics, the main predator are tiger sharks.
Yeah.
Tiger shark teeth are designed like sort of chainsaws, so they can cut right through the carapace of the turtle.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
thank you.
How does the ocean feed me? But a thing is going through my mind right now, and really my heart. I'm feeling this. I've been at least partly environmentally conscious for many decades. With the passage of time and climate change and so forth, there isn't much good news. I mean, I don't even see all that much hope, which is very deflating personally, and it's not how I feel about any other topic anywhere. But here, I've heard 2 or 3 stories of animals being brought back from the edge of extinction. And some of my environmental friends forget to talk about the successes. I don't think they do, actually. It's all dark. And so we are capable, and there have been so many instances of animals thriving after we almost deplete them entirely, but thriving because also of humanity. So what we're capable of, it just brought me a sudden wave of joy to see that there are people out there who see what good can be done. If we could build on the good, maybe there'd be more affirmative action toward saving the planet.
I'd like to share an observation. When I think back 30, 40 years ago, Jacques Cousteau was a leader that everybody knew the work that he was doing on the ocean. We don't seem to have that sort of leadership now that's visible. Mark, I mean, you're doing great work, but there's no leader globally that's recognized to wake everybody up. You know, I miss Jacques Cousteau. I know his son's still doing stuff. Can you speak to that, or who's our leadership? What's going on?
So Jacques is dearly missed. He was certainly one of my childhood inspirations, and he was a unique individual. You know, was born at the right time, the right place, had the right opportunities, and no, he's not been replaced. And there's people who want to be the new Jacques Cousteau, but they're not as effective. And then I'm sure there's people out there, you know, who haven't been discovered by Hollywood. So I think it's just circumstances.
How about my hero, David Attenborough?
David Attenborough.
Yeah.
I mean, his series on the planet is just absolutely, and he mixes caution with optimism, and I absolutely love him for that.
And he can touch, so he touches vast numbers of people, which most of the rest of us maybe don't in the same way. Les, I'm sorry to break the news to you, but you may be older than you think. It's been more than 30 years.
Has it? Oh,
I think so.
oh well. Yeah. Hmm.
Great discussion. Thank you. So, Mark, you want to do your next part?
Sure. Okay. Now we're going to take a trip on the dark side, looking at the threats to our beautiful Mother Ocean. So despite all the free gifts Mother Ocean has given to us that we've all just discussed, she's very much suffering because of us. So a quick list. It's hard to list everything together, but these are sort of the top 5 and not any particular order. There's overfishing and the associated destruction of seafloor habitats, invasive species, which are species that humans have moved around the planet into new locations where they cause trouble, plastic debris, chemical pollution. There's also other types that I won't have time to cover. Each one of these 3 sections, by the way, could be a whole course and book. So I'm going to have to be fairly brief. And then the twin 800-pound gorillas of ocean warming and ocean acidification. So let's look at each of those briefly. And remember that we'll be talking about solutions as well as these threats. So overfishing. Overfishing is rampant all around the world because most of the ocean does not belong to anyone. The high seas, all the nations claim the ocean waters within 200 nautical miles of shore, but that leaves most of the ocean basically a global commons. And typically with humans, if you have a commons, it gets overexploited because if I don't catch the fish, somebody else will, so I'm going to catch it. And even in well-regulated fisheries, things run amok. Here's 6 examples of species that are presumably well-regulated in the different organizations that regulate them. And you can see in every case, the stocks are collapsing. I'd like to call particular attention to bluefin tuna, one of the largest predatory fishes of the ocean, absolutely stunningly beautiful. And rich people, such as this guy in the Tokyo fish market, are willing to pay millions of dollars for a single fish of high quality sashimi grade just to, impress people, I guess. With that kind of demand, you can be assured that bluefin tuna are on their way out. Associated with fishing is what's called discarded bycatch. That is, whether it's a net or hooked line, typically things are caught that aren't being targeted. And because the hold of the boat, fishing boat, commercial fishing boat is limited, people don't want to save stuff, even if they could sell it or people could eat it. They want to high grade. They want to select the most valuable species. Everything else gets tossed overboard. This is particularly a problem in what's called the bottom trawling fishery, where the seafloor is scraped of all living things. So here's just a couple examples. Invertebrate bycatch in eastern Canada. All this stuff is going to be thrown overboard, all this living material, including things that form habitat. Here in Baja California, the shrimp fishery has tremendous bycatch. There's what's being targeted. Everything else here is thrown overboard. And then a tragic fishery in the northern Gulf of California for the totoaba, which is a fish that's presumably has medicinal value or does have, it's presumed to have medicinal value and therefore is highly prized and paid for in China. And in fact, it does nothing. And the bycatch includes things such as sharks and especially the smallest dolphin on the planet, the vaquita porpoise, which is almost extinct. There's about 10 left in the wild, simply for a fallacy for catching this other fish. Nets and lines of hooks that go along the seafloor damage the seafloor, including pulling up deep sea ancient corals. This coral individual here is hundreds, if not thousands of years old, uprooted by a net and tossed overboard. Well, it will die as it rolls along the seafloor. So, fisheries. Invasive species. This world map sort of shows where most of the known harmful alien species from the ocean exist. It's basically where there's large seaports around the world. You can see it's not as bad in the tropics because the tropics already is inundated with species, but more temperate areas get a lot of invaders. The way this happens is solely because of thoughtless ways we do our shipping. Large ships all have what are called ballast tanks around their edges, which help the ship trim itself, that is, level itself, when it has an uneven load of containers or whatever else it's carrying. So this ballast water is taken in vast quantities from the ocean in one port, steamed across the ocean to another port where the water is released. So essentially, it's just scooping up a bunch of basically larvae and spores and juvenile forms of various marine species, transporting them across the ocean and dumping them at a tremendous rate. The problem is when a species is introduced to a new area and all its natural controls have disappeared, its predators, its competitors, its diseases. And what happens is that species could run amok. So one of the most obvious examples is the invasion of the Caribbean region by Pacific lionfish, shown there in the inset. The native range is in the Coral Triangle region north of Australia. These things got in the water around Miami and rapidly spread up the Gulf Stream along the east coast of the U.S., then throughout the greater Caribbean region. These fish have never been in the Atlantic Ocean. The native fish have no idea what these things are. They don't even look like fish, and they are rapidly turning baby fish of various species into lionfish. Classic invasion. Plastic debris. Unfortunately, most of the plastics being produced on this planet are not for permanent objects, but are for throwaway objects. Water containers, straws, spoons, plates, what have you. And this is especially true in Southeast Asia, where most of the plastic enters the oceans because of poor sanitary practices. You can see that in the map in the upper left. These plastics then spread in the ocean's currents around the world. The lower right map shows the hot spots of plastic debris. These are the centers of the great gyres that occur in the northern and southern parts of each ocean. The largest patch we know of is obviously in the Pacific, the largest ocean. This one there is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It doesn't really look like this, but there's a lot of plastic out there, and certain parts of the world, the beaches are scoops for this plastic. So the photo on the lower left there is the shore of the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, constantly covered in plastic. There are groups that go up there and clear the plastic every year, and it's immediately replaced. So this is a really scary topic in the ocean because the plastics cause so many problems. First, many animals mistakenly eat the plastic and other debris, and in fact, sometimes intentionally. You can see this dead albatross chick here found on the beach at Midway Atoll, its stomach filled with all this plastic shown on the right. Not because it chose it, but because its parents thought that that plastic was a food item and fed it to the chick. The chick then was filled with plastic and starved to death. Old nets that are released and hook and line, they're released in vast quantities in the ocean, end up entangling sea life and killing them. They also connect with habitats such as corals and break them down. And floating rafts of plastic also help to distribute and move alien species around the world as species attached to these things are associated with them and they raft to different parts of the world. Now, most insidious of all is the fact that plastic never really goes away. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller bits till it becomes what are called microplastics. And unfortunately, microplastics have a nasty habit of, one, ending up in our food and in us, and two, adhering to pollutants. So some of the pollutants down here are associated with plastic debris one way or another. So we have microplastics right now as we speak in our blood, in our organs. Women have them in their placentas and their newborns. And I have great fear about the future of this issue. Then there's the other forms of pollution. Pollution is just basically overloading a natural system with natural or unnatural phenomena. It's important to keep in mind that the ocean is downstream from everything almost. And so what we put in the Mississippi River drainage ends up in the ocean. All that excess fertilizer creates what are called dead zones at the mouth of major rivers. The pollutants biomagnify. I'll show you the slide on that, and a variety of other things. We've dumped nuclear waste in the ocean. There's now the threat of deep sea mining. There's also other forms of pollution besides chemical pollution: light, sound, heat, all these things. So particularly problematic is a process called biomagnification. That is where pollutants are in fairly small concentrations in seawater. They are taken in by plankton, which are eaten by larger things and larger things, and basically concentrate up the food web by a process called biomagnification, to the point where seafood that we eat has unhealthy levels of, for example, mercury here, which enters the atmosphere in our rivers from coal and from burning coal and from especially gold mining. So the Food and Drug Administration has advisories that women of childbearing age and young children, forget the old guys, I guess, should not eat swordfish, shark, king mackerel, or tilefish. We really need to be careful about what we're eating in the sea. Okay, I hate this part of these talks. Ocean warming, ocean acidification. So the oceans have been steadily warming. This graph shows the sort of annual up and down cycles of the world ocean. We're very accurate in measuring the world ocean temperature, both from satellites and from thousands of floating buoys drifting around the oceans. And what you can see is the oceans have been gradually warming. This is temperature on the y-axis. Each one of these annual cycles laid upon each other. And until last year, 2016 was known as sort of the warmest ocean year on average. But then last year, something very scary happened that just scared the bejesus out of the marine science community. As you can see, in 2023, starting in March and April, the ocean's world temperature spiked. It went up and it stayed up. The purple here is 2024 so far this year. We don't know exactly why this has happened. There's a variety of hypotheses, but this is a really scary jump in temperature. So what happens with a warming ocean? Well, first, polar ice caps are melting. The North Polar ice cap is especially warming rapidly, and we're losing the sea ice. The sea ice is where ice seals live, which are the predominant prey of polar bears. The polar bears are now listed under the Endangered Species Act, and the seals they eat are threatened as well. And the Arctic Ocean is changing more rapidly than any other part of the world's ocean. As the ocean warms, which it's doing right along with the atmosphere, the seawater expands, causing sea level rise. So warming water expands, causing the oceans to go up. It's not just about melting ice. And associated with warming water are more intense storms, such as hurricanes. So think of that combination when we look at future sea level rise around New Orleans, combining that with some of the superstorms like Hurricane Katrina that obliterated New Orleans back then. And a word to the wise, if you own land in some of these areas, you may think about getting rid of it if you want your kids and grandkids to inherit something worthwhile. So my primary expertise is coral reefs, and we've lost about 50% of the coral reefs in the world so far. These are parts of the ocean that harbor about a quarter of all marine species. And what happens when the water gets too warm is that the symbiotic microbes that live inside the corals and allow them to photosynthesize breaks down. That mutualism no longer works in hot water. So the corals spit out the microbes, and the microbes are what give them their color. So we call this coral bleaching. It's not chemical bleaching, it's just loss of color. And without their microbes, those corals will soon die. Once they die, they get covered in seaweeds, as you see here on the right, and then crumble, and the reef dies completely with all its life. I have seen this happen personally, and it is gut-wrenching. And it's really weird having my face mask filled with tears. So what the ocean species are doing as the ocean warms is they're moving. So tropical species are moving into what used to be temperate areas. Temperate species are moving into what used to be polar areas. So we're having a redistribution of species in the ocean. There will be winners and losers. The ocean's not going to die. It's just going to be very different than we're used to. And this includes species that, we don't give much thought to that can cause some problems. For example, Humboldt squid, a tropical species shown here, they get to be about as big as a human being, are voracious predators. And when they migrated to Chile, they completely decimated the hake fishery there. And you can see they've already well into Arctic waters along the northern west coast. So things are changing rapidly. It's going to be a new world. Finally, ocean acidification. We've been lucky in that the ocean absorbs about 30% of the excess carbon dioxide we put into the atmosphere. That's good for us because it reduces the warming rate, but at the same time, it's causing the chemistry of the ocean to change because carbon dioxide reacts with water molecules and forms a weak acid called carbonic acid. And that's bad news for sea life that has calcium carbonate or limestone skeletons, such as all these species here. So shellfish of various kinds, corals, and even some forms of seaweeds and algae. These species suffer in an acidified ocean. And the species they feed and are fed upon also suffer. So for example, salmon, which don't have a major effect of ocean acidification so far, their prey, when they're juveniles, such as these little planktonic snails called pteropods, and the prey of their prey, these little single-celled plants called coccolithophores, they have calcium carbonate skeletons. You can see what happens to a pteropod skeleton as it becomes in more and more acidified water. So ocean acidification is on its way to also having major effects on ocean ecosystems. Again, there will be winners and losers. So with that little trip through hell, that little preview, our discussion question now is, what do you believe is the greatest threat to Mother Ocean? Ready for the breakout rooms.
Inside, I just don't want you guys to see it. But now's the time for us to share what we talked about in the breakout rooms. So any man may start.
Well, we were just sharing with our three men that I wasn't aware, Mark, that you've already spoken. Did you already have an MKP group that meets regularly on this. I'd like to see a larger audience of MKP men. I'll talk to you on Tuesday or before to see how, and if we can invite the leadership, MKP leadership, to be more aware of this. It's okay for us to take care of Mother Earth, but let's take care of Mother Ocean. I think we're a little bit ignorant of that. How many men on this call are dolphin or sea urchin or, have names from the sea? I'm a dingo. I'm on the fucking desert. I'm nowhere near the ocean. How many men here have got dolphin souls? Good. Yeah.
Well, I'll follow up what Leslie just said. I mentioned to him that Mark very generously participated in a forum that the Elders for Climate Justice and an MKP mission group conducted. And I'm going to send Leslie the address, the link here to sign up for our forums. But I told him Mark is very generous about sharing this information to whoever will listen.
Stu, do you want to take 2 minutes to talk about the letter campaign?
I'll just briefly mention that the Elders for Climate Justice and the growth of that Warriors for Climate Justice, who are MKP warriors, have a campaign to ask the leaders of MKP, the board of directors, the movers and shakers within MKP, to get involved in this battle, in the fight to preserve the earth and the ocean. And I'll post, or John, can you post the link for what Warriors for Climate Justice, and we can invite men to go there and sign up and be part of that campaign to pepper the board and the leadership of MKP with requests to get involved and to strengthen the information that's passed on to initiates, to new warriors in the weekend. The message there could be a whole lot stronger than what is done now for the Earth Steward role. So anyway, John, if you want to paste that email address or the link, I guess it's the email address, yeah. And I invite you guys to check it out.
Yeah, and if you haven't, we Elders for Climate Justice is definitely a very worthy organization, or hui, or what we would call it in Hawaii, group of men.
And I will send the link to Mr. Brummett so that he can include it in the information that goes out after the forum.
Thanks, John. Good to see you.
Mark, I am with Bob Brummett in terms of, I had this uplifted feeling before that I shared with you, that there are successes, and that I don't hear about those very often, because we stay on the dark side. There's a lot of dark to talk about. And now when you made the last presentation and I was looking at the polar bear video, I wanted to throw up. And I noticed that it's really hard for me to dive into that topic. I want to close my eyes and deny it.
Yeah.
And well, like Bob, I had tears in my eyes as I was watching that, and I like what John and Stu are telling me about ways of reaching out to MKP leadership. There have to be ways of being more expansive than just me installing a solar panel or having an electric car. Because it doesn't, because one person doing that or picking up garbage on the beach or on a trail, so what? Given the vastness of the issue. So I'm feeling very depressed again now. And it seems to me that the shift has to happen societally, not individually. And we have to skip making one individual spread to 3 individuals, spread to 10 or 100. It doesn't have enough impact anymore. So society-wide shifts right after the government does, or right after the largest corporations do. And I don't know how to do that. And I throw lots of money at environmental organizations. I don't know how to do that. Okay, I'm in with depression. Not clinical depression, just attitudinal depression.
I will say that this is the second time I've seen Mark's presentation, and it chokes me up. It has choked me up again today, and I can't imagine how devastating it is for Mark to be down there in the environment that you love, Mark, and seeing the damage and feeling enthusiastic to do something about it. And well, I hope we help you.
I think the healing comes in something like this is repeating the message. We're men, we're human, we forget. And being reminded, such as presentations like this and our sharing it with other men in my community, I think it's important. It's a key. I don't remember everything, and I don't think anybody else does either. But speaking with John earlier about the Earth Steward on the weekends, I asked about if that's still in place at the NWTAs going on these days. And he informs me they've been trying to get that as a leadership position, and so far it's been denied. So I think the constant message is important. Just like television advertising, you have to hear it several times before it starts sinking in to create action. That's my piece.
Yeah, some of you may know I come from the world of entertainment. I did talk shows for a while. But the new energy that's getting eyeballs, YouTube and streaming services and podcasts, there's new energy. I think it's up for us men to identify younger men and women to have leadership role in doing this. If you spot somebody, say, hey, create a YouTube or a podcast about this stuff. It can happen. We can reach thousands, millions of people with this new technology. I'm excited about the future, what we have in terms of the technology. I'm depressed about the state of the planet and the ocean. Mark, you already got your hands full, but have you ever considered having a podcast devoted to what you're doing?
I don't even know where to start.
Well, yeah, I'm putting you on the spot, mate. I'm sorry, but yeah, I mean, it's somebody mentioned to reach more people. We have it available to us, podcasts. Somebody reaching people that way about what's happening with it. And the story can be told. There's also romance about the ocean. Young people going out to surf and to fish and to play in the ocean. Reach those sort of people and to wake them up with, they won't have it if the ocean goes away and it's destroyed. So I think if we can identify some younger people, I'm too old to do it, but some younger people that go there with your passion, wake people up, because that's what the initiation is. waking people up. So we need to initiate men to wake up to what's happening to the ocean.
Thanks for that, Les. I completely agree. I've done that on a small scale, just locally in Hawaii, where I'm focusing on our local coral reefs. And so I organized and got some modest funding for a public education campaign. And if you guys are interested in this as a potential model, go to fishpono.org. I'll put that in the chat.
Mm.
But I agree that education is absolutely essential. And I also agree with one man was talking about the repetition of advertising. Yes, I've been told that a million times. It's like, keep the message coming. Yeah, that was Stephen.
And at the beginning of this, I said I was hoping for 25 to 50, MKP men being here on this. And to me, the biggest threat is denial of responsibility. What part are each of us, in those who are not here, for just taking responsibility for what's happening. I mentioned the movie Don't Look Up, and equivalent is Don't Look Beneath the Waves, don't make waves.
Good point, Tom.
Sorry. When you say don't make waves, Tom, as an attitude that exists in society, is that the reason we have so few men on this call? I know that Elders for Climate Justice have their regular meetings and do a vast job in trying to reach out to others to attend these. And here we have the same thing again. So is that what it is, that people would rather just be beneath the water where there's no churning? There maybe because I feel my resistance to the darkness. I feel lost in this, and I know what my attitude is about climate and earth and ocean. I know what that is, and I still resist. So if we can't get men in the room, then, and if we're blaming them for having the attitudes that they have, what is it that we haven't found a way to say to turn on the importance to people about their own lives? It can be a very selfish purpose in doing this, but they're not here. So do we blame them, or do we find a way to reach them? And I honestly, I don't know the answer. The answer should be we find a way. But this has been going on for so long, and still the room is only moderately attended.
You're asking a fundamental question, John. The scientific community has been warning society about a whole host of environmental issues for a long time. There's always been a big time lag until action takes place. And with the climate, it's just ludicrous. Human-caused climate change was hypothesized in the scientific literature in the 1890s, with support gathering through the years, and finally the evidence starting to accrue in the 60s and 70s. And the alarms sounded then and have been sounding more and more frequently. What are the leaders of the world doing? Nothing. So we're getting right back to what is the greatest threat to Mother Ocean? And I believe it's various aspects of humanity. And Bob and I talking kind of we were trying to get down to the very core issues, and I shared something I haven't really shared with people much because I don't like I'm conflict avoidant by nature. But I've come to believe that it's the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all of which teach of man's dominion over nature, that nature belongs to us, that we're in charge, that we're not part of nature. It's in all three of those religions. And that attitude dominates our planet and has led to the consumer society, corporate greed, and all that horrible stuff I just mentioned. As a species, most of us are separated from nature now, and it's heinous. We need to go back to indigenous cultural beliefs, I believe. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Hope I didn't offend anyone.
No, but can I make a comment on your on your observations? You listed plastics problems in the oceans as coming more from Southeast Asia than any other single place. The dominant religions there are none of the ones that you mentioned. Well,
yes, but all those, everything else is caused by the West. But that's a really good point, John.
Yeah, and well, so in these places where Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, Taoism, etc., where they may not be fully dominant anymore, but they're prevalent, and so I don't know that it's just a Western religion. The other thing is, if you want to go back to indigenous ways of so long ago, I think that's not going to happen in the modern world. And that's my judgment is that we can learn from the past and we won't become the past.
I'm not talking about going to the past. I'm talking about reconnecting with nature, with the fundamental understanding of the absolute truth that humans are part of the biosphere. We are not separate from it.
Cool. And we have 30 minutes left. So Mark, let's end this with a smile. What can we do about all this?
Yes, I definitely want to leave with a sense of what's called active hope. This is something I read from Václav Havel, that hope is not sitting around hoping somebody else does something. Hope is taking action and doing it regardless of the outcome. And that's what keeps me going. So let's look at possible solutions to this mess. So part 3, solutions. So before we go into solutions and to sort of finish up our discussion of the gloom and doom, there are 2 great psychological challenges to ocean conservation. And some of you have already touched on these. Number 1 is that the ocean is invisible to most people. So if we're not facing the environmental issues that are in our face on land, how can we expect people to actually even know what's going on in the oceans? So the job of the scientific community is to peel back the layers and show us what is beneath and what's happening. And the second great psychological issue is the fallacy of inexhaustibility. The oceans are so large compared to us as individuals that humanity has always treated the ocean in such a way that we can dump anything we want in the ocean and forget about it, and we can take anything we want out of the oceans and there'll be plenty more. And of course, that's not true. Look at all the water in the world. That 800-mile diameter sphere on the left, that's every single drop. Imagine 8 billion people doing what they're doing, whether they can affect a sphere of water that large. And the answer is hell yes, they can. And they've definitely done it. On the right is all the air in the atmosphere. These are very, very thin layers around our planet that we think as being infinite, but they're not even close to being infinite. So what can I do? Well, it involves education, as we've discussed, educating ourselves, educating others, definitely involves voting in this nation. And we can all be more ocean activists. And here are some of the ways. To help in general, joining ocean conservation groups. My favorites, the Coral Reef Alliance for coral reefs, the Ocean Conservancy for the oceans in general, and Oceana for oceans in general. There's also other organizations, and there's local organizations, importantly. I believe very much in the importance of local community action. To end overfishing, it's all on us in the developed nations, and that boils down to consumer choice. And there's excellent guides out there to do this. The Monterey Bay Aquarium has a seafood watch program, which you can look up online. You can download these guide cards for various parts of the world. There's also a smartphone app version. And importantly, these are scientifically based assessments of different types of seafood, which are best choices, which are good alternatives, and which we should avoid. And you can actually order these cards and imagine being at a restaurant and they're serving some fish and you say, well, where did this fish come from? The guy goes, I don't know, and I don't really even know the name of the fish. Give the card to him and ask him to give it to the owner of the restaurant. We can end overfishing by consumer choice if we all choose to be engaged. Another key tool, not only for fisheries, but for marine biodiversity in general, is called marine protected areas. These are setting aside parts of the ocean for protection. We've done about 15-20% of the land. We've only done less than 5% of the ocean so far. So this is a short film by Oceana I wanted to show you to introduce marine protected areas. Let me know if you can't hear it. Oops, that didn't work.
Marine protected areas, or MPAs for short, are basically any protected part of the ocean. These are areas set aside to safeguard the sea from man-made threats. Some MPAs allow fishing in some areas, or only protect certain species. No-take zones, the strictest form of protection, prohibits all fishing, mining, and oil drilling. Only 4 to 7% of the world's oceans are set aside as MPAs, and an even smaller portion are no-take zones. Can such a relatively small area really help? Let's look at Mexico's Gulf of California. There, in one small reserve, fish abundance shot up by almost 500% in 10 years. Top predators like sharks and groupers multiplied 11-fold. Locals now earn above average incomes hosting and guiding ecotourists. Or what about the Philippines? In one no-take zone off Apple Island, big fish like snappers skyrocketed after 9 years of protection. Moreover, many of these extra fish spilled over into nearby fishing grounds. Local fishermen reported that their catches doubled. So MPAs not only help ocean animals, they can help communities too. But there's a catch. Protecting just 4 to 7% of the ocean isn't enough. Scientists say we need to safeguard at least 30% of the sea to restore abundant oceans. With that amount, we can conserve marine wildlife and maximize how much fish we can sustainably catch. Want to protect ocean habitats? Join us at oceana.org.
So there's actually now a movement worldwide to protect 30% of the world's oceans by the year 2030. And some states like mine have rejected that notion because They don't want to infringe on anyone's fishing rights. Invasive species, the way to end that is to control exotic animals that are sea life. So never release an exotic pet. If you have an aquarium, never, ever release what's living in that aquarium. And you can do things like eat lionfish. There's actually a fishery that's developed, a conservation fishery, to help have fishermen target lionfish to get them out of the Caribbean region. To end plastic debris, it may sound trite, trivial, and old-fashioned, but the need is to reduce our consumption, to reuse plastic items, to recycle them, to refuse them all together, and to clean up after others. They're trying to do a treaty now about plastic release into the environment. There needs to be less plastics produced that are not for permanent objects. And I don't know, I don't think the corporations will ever do it. But you know, avoiding things like buying a plastic bottle of water, which to me is horrific because water weighs a lot. It takes a huge carbon footprint to move that water around, and then somebody drinks the water out of it and throws it away. It's classic consumer society thoughtlessness. To end ocean pollution, we have to control our effluents. And that includes anyone who lives anywhere near a water course that flows into the ocean. If we're chemical waste properly, there's instructions for doing that, and demand action from our agencies and politicians. To end ocean warming and acidification is the hardest task of all. We need to replace the fossil fuel society on which our economy is currently based. We can reduce our individual emissions. I believe that individual action, however tiny, is important because it's a teaching opportunity. It's an example for others. I'm reminded of a story of a little boy after a storm taking sea stars that had been thrown up on the beach and throwing them back into the ocean. And a guy came along and said, you know, you're wasting your time. What you're doing is just a drop in the bucket. And the little boy looked at the sea star in his hand and said, yeah, but not for this one. Threw it out in the water and continued.
Yeah.
So reducing our emissions, growing native trees and vegetation are important for carbon sequestration, and of course, voting for the ocean and the climate. And there's actually an organization called Vote for the Ocean. And this is a book by the Union of Concerned Scientists about how to reduce your carbon footprint as an individual. So I just want to end with a part of a poem by E.E. Cummings that stated, for whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea. The ocean is a reflection of us, and right now it's not a pretty picture. So, final discussion question. What will I do to help save Mother Ocean? This is a call for individual activism. Anything will help. Thank you all so much for listening.
Only have 7 minutes left, so let's take this debrief time. And this will kind of be our checkout. So if something came up for you during the course of your breakout room you'd like to share, and everybody maybe take a minute or so, share what came up for you. Anybody can start.
Well, hats off to Mark for putting this together. It's been, once I figured out the technology part of it, which took a while. I'm sorry about the overload on that. Having to listen to you again, Mark, on your recording, and that was me who caused that. But anyway, Les just used a term that I've never heard before, and that sort of caught me by surprise. Us old guys struggle with empathic overload.
Yeah, empathy
And I
overload.
totally get where you're coming from, Mark. But for older guys, I'll do everything in my power, but I also want to maintain my joy to the end. That's the only thing I have any control over at all.
Yeah.
What I have done is I don't, for the past 8 years, mostly because of a DUI, but I don't, for the past 8 years, I haven't had a car. I travel by bus and bicycle. I also gave up bottles of shampoo. I now get bar soap and bar shampoo. That's quite a bit. The hard one is cat litter trash bags. It's very difficult to get cellulose bags. They don't make them anymore. And the shopping bags are so perfect for that. It's kind of hard to get even with the compostable bags. That's what I've done. And hopefully I'll be able to get solar panels on my roof.
I want to jump in because we do use recyclable kitty litter bags. And what I want to do is have everybody put your email address in the chat so we can give each other resources for this. The other thing, it's like we were just talking about. I'm part of a dance, and we do use recycled paper plates and everything. The spoons, everything, our glasses, everything is recyclable for doing it. So just push for recycling wherever you got it. I also am committing to fly no more than once a year, round trip, and I'm also using my bike a lot more. I'm in.
Well, I committed to joining Oceana.com. Don't know why I didn't do it when I last heard Mark speak, but I'm going to do it this time. And also in the group, I pointed out that the water bottle, the metal water bottle that was given to me in 2015 when I initiated, has caused me to use so many fewer plastic bottles to carry my water around. I can't count how many I've saved. So what a great idea that somebody, when I initiated, organized to give all of us a metal water bottle that said MKP on it. I'm in, and I'm out.
Well, as a struggling metrosexual, I've got to give up shampoo bottles now. Damn it. God. Just when I thought I was okay, I've got to give up the shampoo bottles. Just, yeah, I love this. Good on you, Mark, for putting this together. Thank you. It's about communication. Because Bill Bishop was saying, when he brought up the empathy overload, there's so many things we can donate to, but this is a major, major cause. If we can't help Mother Ocean, we are fucking doomed. So I'm committed to being more awake and just to be initiated to what needs to be done with plastic. I'm checking out with that. And thank you, Mark, for putting this together. And I'm going to follow through with the leaders at MKP to see if we can give you more visibility and see if we can do that. I know you've got the elder thing that's already there, which I was not aware of, but good on them as well. So I'm checking out with love for men and love from what we can do. And I'm riding the joy whale. Riding the joy whales. Let's go for the joy. I'm in. Or out.
Sorry for I'll try to be short. I do get money or I write to a congressman or something. In addition, what I think the thing that counts the most is if I just am willing to bring up in conversations, not what somebody else should do or be. It's like I found out that that's a turnoff for me too. But just that I should be willing to talk about how important nature is to me in conservation, just as a topic of conversation and becoming conscious. Just, I think that's probably the very best thing that I can do, is be willing to talk my heart about nature and the importance of governments and individuals and so forth, doing just what we can without losing William's happiness, though, the joy quotient in life. So it's so important that I not become overcome by the darkness. That won't help anybody.
Thank you, John. Okay, so I want to say thank you to everybody. Mark, thank you especially. It was just an excellent presentation for the time and effort you put into doing this. It was a blessing to all of us. I think for everybody. And I want to thank our production team, Steve, Art, Tom, for all the effort you guys put into to making this happen. And I want to thank especially all you men who came up and saw it and shared this time with us. You're the reason we do this. So keep coming back. And once we get the link to this, once we get the video done and uploaded to YouTube, we'll have a link that we'll send out to this email list. I'll make sure everybody gets it. Please share it with everybody you can. Okay. And with that.